Welcome everybody. Apparently this kind of format is pretty suited for my lifestyle. Every now and then I jump into the project and do some programming. Because of that I made some progress. There are three main things which I did. I added objects to the game, I implemented collision detection, and I improved the overall structure of the game. The goal of the objects is to be mostly decorative. They can range from barrels to trees or fire pits. But perhaps I will extend them to have other functions as well, for example as teleportation points between the different maps. But that is not fixed yet. Since the objects are pretty similar to the player, I could reuse some of the code, mostly the initialization of the object and the drawing of the object. Normally you would use the abstract classes if you can use the same functions for two different classes, but the abstract classes of Python are a bit weird. Also, I don't plan on having a large class tree of different object-like classes. I will have the player, mobs, and objects. And because of that, I don't think it is necessary to create an abstract class for that. But let's stop talking about the meta stuff of the object and see how I implemented them. Currently I have a text file where each line stands for one object. The first two parameters show which image is loaded into the object. Those require two parameters in case I want to have an animated object. They represent the first and the last image of the object tileset. For example, this fire here. The first two values are the X and Y position on the map, and the next four positions are the size and the position of the hitbox. I will most likely add an additional number which will tell the object if it has some kind of special characteristics. For example, if only the image should be drawn without the hitbox, or if the player should teleport somewhere when he steps on it. But so far I haven't done that. For each object a new class is initiated, and that class gets stored in a list. When the object has to be drawn, then it first draws the shadow. The shadow has the size of the hitbox. Then it draws the rectangle which outlines the hitbox. Normally I have that disabled though. And as the last step it draws the sprite. Another feature of the object class is that other classes can read the hitbox in form of a rectangle and use that for collision detection. So far that is all I have implemented for the objects. And now let's go over to the collision. Currently there are two forms of collision detection. One checks if the player is on a specific tile. I created a copy of the text file which is used to store the map information. Whenever there is a 1 in the second file and the player is above the tile, then the green square at the bottom right turns red. I implemented that before I started implementing the objects. I will probably discard it at some point because I most likely can do everything with the object collision while having more flexibility. But currently it is still in there. The other place where I implemented collision is between the player and the objects. I plan on making the collision of the object interact with the player and the mobs. But there will be no interaction between the mobs themselves and the player and the mobs. Since I haven't implemented any mobs yet, I can only show how the collision between the player and the objects work. When I start up the game, I load all hitboxes of the objects into a list. Each time a new frame starts, the player tries to move, and for the movement of the player I call his movement function with the list of hitboxes. With that movement function I move the player in the X direction. If the player has a collision with any of the objects after being moved, I revert the movement, and after that I do the same in the Y direction. And that's already everything. At the beginning of this video I mentioned that I improved the overall structure of the code, but since it is still a bit messy I won't show it yet. I might give you an update on that in a later video, but for today I've told enough. Goodbye and see you later.